Good morning.
Good morning.
So this morning, we've been working our way through the Sermon on the Mount, and we are on the Lord's Prayer. Some of you may faintly remember that we just talked about prayer. I just talked about prayer in July, but I am not expecting anyone to remember either that it happened or what was said, so that's okay. You may remember that at the time I said that there were resources available, and since then I've purchased some books that are on the table back there about prayer, including The Complete Idiot's Guide to Prayer and Prayer for Dummies. And when I ordered those, I didn't have any of you in particular in mind for those. But I think that's the way we feel quite often, isn't it? Like Prayer for Dummies is about where we've got to start. There are days, I still have those days. That's okay. So today we want to continue on in prayer and try to learn some of the lessons from the scriptures that were read. We want to start in Psalm 138, mostly because we should always, I think, start these conversations in the Psalms. Sometimes we get this impression that the only real prayers are ones where we use our own words. And that may or may not be true, but we can be fairly certain that God doesn't think it's true, because God gave us all of these pre-printed prayers in the Bible. So clearly God thought it was fine if we just used other people's words and adapted them to our own situation. Right? So there are various types of prayers in the Psalms. There are prayers of joy, and prayers of mourning, and prayers of rage, and prayers of anger, and prayers of supplication, and all of these sorts of big fancy theological words. So that whatever it is you need, there's probably a psalm for it sometime or somewhere. And so the psalm that was read this morning is kind of a general praise psalm. It's a psalm for when things are going well, and you just want to spend some time thanking God for what has gone well and hoping that it's going to continue. And that's very handy, and it's nice because they're such general psalms that it's not like this is a psalm specifically for sunny Tuesdays in January or something like that, because you never use one of those in West Virginia, right? But it's just sort of, it's a general praise psalm, and whatever it is you're trying to praise for, you can stuff it into the psalm and go, yeah, like specifically this is what I'm praising you for, God. And so that's always a good place to start when you're trying to, you really do want to pray, but the words just aren't coming. We've got a whole book full of them. 150 psalms, plus little bits and pieces all over the Bible to give you words. Another ideal psalm was the one that we read from Solomon. And Solomon, of course, is great and wise king, and this is one of the recorded prayers that he prays. But we need to start a bit before that and realize that Solomon started with worship. Right? That First Kings starts talking first about all of the sacrifices that Solomon used to do. So he starts with sacrifice. He starts with worship. He starts with worship that is joyful. He starts with worship that is exuberant. He starts with worship that is really, really over the top when it comes right down to it, right? It says he used to sacrifice 1,000 rams. Well, even if that's an exaggeration by a factor of 10, 100 is still a lot. That's a big gathering, right? Because, it's presumably after you sacrifice them, you're going to eat them all. Well, you gotta invite a lot of friends over if you're going to eat 100 sheep. That would probably feed a good chunk of Morgantown when it comes right down to it. 100 sheep. Right? So it's just really, really over the top. Solomon is just really happy. Solomon is really joyful about all sorts of things. And then God responds. Which is not normal, right? This isn't the way most of us live our lives, that we're sort of walking through our day doing what we're doing, and all of a sudden God comes to us and says something to us in words. And in case you think, well, yeah, this is the sort of thing that happened all the time back in Bible times, it just doesn't happen anymore. No. Really aren't a lot of times in, like the Bible covers a couple thousand years of human history and records a few times when God actually came and talked to people. But a few times every 1,000 years just isn't something you can call a regular event. Right? And like all through David's life, as far as I can remember off the top of my head, David never had God come and talk to him directly. God always sent the prophet to talk to David. Right? So Solomon, we don't know what he's thinking, but all of a sudden, God replies. And God says, whatever you want. Just going to give you a blank check, Solomon. You fill it in. But Solomon, in his reply, doesn't just blurt out the first thing that comes into his mind. So he starts out this prayer by recognizing this relationship. He says, God, I know about you, and I know about you because of my dad. And my dad and you had a good relationship. And my dad and you had a good relationship because my dad was paying attention. Right? My dad sought your will, and he did what he was supposed to do, and therefore... Right? So Solomon starts out by recognizing that this relationship between himself and God is a two-way street. It's not like David was sort of wandering through life, doing whatever he wanted to do, and once in a while threw some coins in the big slot machine in the sky, and boom, out popped blessings. Right? It's like, no. Right? David was trying, sometimes very unsuccessfully, but was trying to walk in basic obedience, and then God would respond to that. Right? And Solomon says, yeah, I understand how this system works. I understand that this relationship is a two-way street, and we need to work at this together. Solomon then goes on to be honest about himself. And this is always a good place to go in prayer. Okay, God, really, this is who I am. I am not the wisest man who ever lived yet. I am not the great and powerful king yet. We don't actually even know if Solomon wanted to be king. We know that Nathan the prophet wanted him to be king. We know that his mom wanted him to be king. And the two of them conspired to make Solomon king. But we don't even know about Solomon himself, whether anybody ever bothered asking him whether he wanted to be king. So, it's not like he's been prepping for this job, or working for this job. Somebody else said, king, there he was. And he's going, wow, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know how to do this and that and the next thing. So he starts out with both this honesty and this humility. That there's a task, and he's not sure how to do it. He's not prepared. So then when he asks for something, he asks for something very specific to the task. I mean, he could ask for all kinds of things just because they popped into his head, or just because it's stuff he's always wanted, or just because the guy on the street had one of these. But he recognizes that he's been given this task, whether he wanted it or not, and he's going to need some help with the task. And the task is going to, in his particular task, is going to require wisdom. So that, right? So again, a significant lesson for us, that whatever this task is we've been given, and maybe it requires patience, and maybe it requires understanding, and maybe it requires wisdom, or whatever it is this task that you've been given requires, that's what you ask for, rather than just, whatever it is you think you're supposed to ask for. So God replies and says, okay, I'll give you the wisdom you asked. Good prayer, Solomon. And I'll give you all of this other stuff. All right? The honor and the wealth and all of this stuff. It's going to be great. Solomon goes on to be both the best and the worst king in Israel's history at the same time. And it's very consistent. We had time to read our way through the Solomon story. He does something great and wonderful, and then he does something sort of extra stupid to make up for it. And then he does the next great and wonderful king thing, and then he does something dumb again. And people have pondered this for 3,000 years now. How can someone be both the wisest and the stupidest king in the world at the same time? God gives Solomon 5 basic rules he's supposed to follow as the king, and he breaks all 5 of them. Right? The wisest man who ever lived. So for this morning, we're just going to realize that prayer isn't enough. That whatever it is, the problem you're facing, prayer is probably not going to fix it alone. There's prayer, and then there's actually doing something. Doing the right thing. There's prayer and there's task. Right? So the classic triangle of change, right, is study, action, reflection. First you study the problem and you study what you might be able to do about it, and then you go out and try something, you go out and do something, and then after you've done something, you sit back and you go, how did that go? And you think about this for a while. Then you go back to study again, and you go, well, let's study how to do it better next time, and how to make a better change. And, right, maybe there was some stuff that didn't work we have to fix, and then you go out and you do it again, right, and you don't get stuck. Right, some of us, got stuck in school. We got really good at the study thing, but, we just want to sit in our offices now and keep studying for the rest of our lives, right? And some people get stuck in the action thing, and they do, and they never think about what it is they're doing, and they create chaos all around them, right? So we keep going around the triangle, hopefully. And prayer is all of those connections, right? So as we go from study to action, we take some time for prayer. We say, God, we've studied, and here's what we're going to do. Help us do well. And then after our action, we spend a little bit of time and we say, okay, God, we did this. Thank you, and sorry for what didn't work. All right, and then we reflect together, and then before we go back to study, we take some time again for prayer. Right? So prayer is all the little connections between the triangle. But prayer doesn't substitute for the triangle. Prayer doesn't substitute for study. I mean, it would be nice. Right? You got an exam coming up. I'm not going to study. I'll just, 10 minutes of prayer beforehand, and I'll get an A. That always works. Right? Landis, this is your way you're going to do it, right? Right. Or, we've got some work to do. Oh, I think I'll pray instead. Usually doesn't happen, right?
I was just asking, what if you're going to school and you're learning how to pray, or you're going to school with your pastor? What if you're learning how to pray and you have to study by praying? Or what?
Well, the praying part is the practice then, right? It's the action. So you pray before you pray to get the prayer right, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, because in some ways that same triangle applies to prayer, right? We can read all sorts of books about prayer, right, and keep studying prayer and never actually get around to praying. Or we can spend all our time praying and never actually reflect on what it is we're doing and just keep, like Jesus said, people who just throw words at God, right? And it looks good and it sounds good. And oh yeah, I'm the pastor, I spend 14 hours a week praying. Don't actually get my sermon done, and I never visit any of you, but boy, do I pray a lot. And so the same thing can happen in prayer, is that you can get lost and never actually accomplish anything. Prayer can be a trap. So moving on then, right? Jesus, right, gives us these warnings. Right? We have the Lord's Prayer there, but we've got the warnings before and after, and Rachel did a really good job of illustrating, right? One of the problems of, do not be like the hypocrites who pray in front of lots of people This, of course, tends not to happen very much anymore because it's like right there, in the Sermon on the Mount. So it feels really embarrassing. I mean, I feel bad enough standing in front of you and praying because, well, it's starting to get a bit long here, but it's the way it goes. Right? But one of the warnings is so interesting. Jesus says, when you pray, not too long. Don't pray too long. And it's one of those things you don't expect. Right? It's like, well, Jesus would say, go out there and pray for 2 solid hours. Really, to get serious about this. Or Jesus spent all night in prayer. You should do that too. And not too long. Just short. Right? And you look, right, I timed it actually yesterday. The Lord's Prayer at normal pace, 23 seconds. It doesn't mean you have to stop after 23 seconds, but Jesus seemed to think a 23-second prayer was totally adequate. Well, you can, the nice thing about that is you can put a lot of 23-second prayers into your day. Right? Before things and after things, enduring things. Do the Reader's Digest condensed version in 15 seconds. Right? Whatever. Right? Not too long, Jesus says. And then do something to show God you're serious. This was one of the things that we heard regularly in God. You have to do something to show God you're serious. Thomas Aduro, who was the president of the seminary, tells the story of when the seminary was just starting and they wanted a library because they didn't really have many books at all. And they knew that if they were going to be taken seriously as a seminary and they wanted to teach their students, they needed a library. So the president was going to order some shelves for the library. Well, they only had a couple dozen books, so, a little 3-foot shelf would have been fine. But no, you have to show God you're serious. So they ordered like a dozen big shelves. Right? And people looked at them and go, well, why would you order a dozen big shelves for your, 20, 30 books that you've got? We're seriously praying about God to send us books. And if we're serious about God actually doing what it is we're going to ask, then we have to be ready. And if we buy this tiny little bookshelf, God's going to look down and go, see, they're not really serious. They don't really actually believe any of this stuff. The same thing happened while I was there. That we had, 20 students there, something like that. And clearly the desks were falling apart, so they ordered new desks. But they ordered 60 desks because they wanted more students. And they wanted to show God that they were serious about wanting more students. So then you order 60 desks. And God looks down and goes, 60 desks. They're serious. They're actually planning. Right? Because the prayer isn't enough. Right? Not too long and then do something. And then finally, Jesus says, and you've got to forgive. You've just got to forgive. And that's a hard one. And yes, I don't know. I think there are exceptions. I really do. There are times when you just can't get there. Right? And, hopefully God will forgive our lack of forgiveness. But the reality is that exceptions aren't what you base your law on. Right? If your law can't really, your general rules especially can't deal with all of the tiny little things that might happen once in your lifetime. This is a general sort of rule. And in general, we need to forgive. It needs to become an important practice in any community because communities do not survive without forgiveness. That is one of the quickest ways to destroy community is to stop forgiving each other. And it's an important practice in two senses of the word practice. Right? The first way is that we just need to keep doing it. We need to forgive one another, and we're going to get lots of practice because it's not something you can just do once and get over with. That sometimes there are things that, that somebody does to you and you forgive it, but you don't really quite get it all forgiven. And you hang on. And so Next week, you have to forgive exactly the same thing again when you see them, because you still haven't quite gotten there yet. Right? So it's that sense of, I'm just going to have to keep doing this all of the time. And then it's practice in the sense that, yeah, I got this one forgiven, and then this person does something else. So I get another opportunity to practice. Right? So when someone sins against you in church, you should say, hallelujah, I get to practice forgiveness, right? That's what we do. Right? Oh, I'm really glad you said that about me behind my back. I get to forgive you now. Hard stuff. Hard stuff. But it's also practice in the sense that we practice it here so that we can practice it out there. Right? That we practice it in here where it's nice and safe. We know each other. We have a relationship already. Right? And it's, we can work on it together. When we have trouble, we can help each other. All of these things that should make it easier. It doesn't always, but it should make it easier here. And then the rest of the week, it's harder. Which is why we practice here. You practice, right, small so that you get bigger. You don't start out baseball by playing the World Series. You start out in slow pitch. Right? So this is church is sort of slow pitch forgiveness. And as we get better at slow pitch forgiveness, then we get out there to the big leagues. And then the real work of forgiveness starts. As I listened to myself this morning, it sounds like prayer is a lot of work. But I think that's just truth. Prayer is a lot of work sometimes. Sometimes it just flows and it's easy and it comes naturally bursting out of us. And sometimes it's a chore. Sometimes it requests of us things we don't want to do, like forgiving, like giving up control. Which is, again, all of these things why we pray. God, help me to do what it is I really need to do, including pray. So let's just take some time this morning in reading worship to sit in silence and to pray.